What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today I want to discuss a topic, and that is giving your players secondary positions in MLB The Show 20. And I want to talk about why you want to do it and why it's going to be really important for your team and important for your players' development and everything like that. It's a topic that I think people kind of skip over and they don't realize because people will go with whatever roster is out there, maybe even the base roster. And the problem with that is the people that create these rosters don't put in necessarily the amount of detail that they should in order to give every single player a secondary position. So in a bit we'll talk about why it's really important to give each player a secondary position, but what I want to show you first is the fact that a lot of the players in the game do not have a secondary position, even though they could play other positions in real life and do have secondary positions. So one of the most important ones that I wanted to point out, and you guys can do this for whatever team you like to play with or want to do a franchise with or whatever it might be, look at your top prospects on the team. So one of the top prospects for the Pittsburgh Pirates is Ke'Bryan Hayes. Obviously, he is a third baseman, but what I want to note is that he has no secondary position, and that's problematic because pretty much any player in the league can play at least first base, especially a third baseman. A third baseman is going to play third base. Now, there are very rare cases where there are really well-established players in the league that won't play a different position, but that's pretty much the only case. This is going to come in handy really with all of your prospects because, realistically speaking, the Pirates could ask Ke'Bryan Hayes to move a position, and he would have to. All of your prospects, you're going to want to go through and give them secondary positions because a lot of them aren't going to have the correct secondary positions, especially the important top prospects, guys like Oneil Cruz, guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes. Like Oneil Cruz's secondary position is incorrect. Oneil Cruz can play infield and he can play outfield, right field primarily. And so what you want to do, especially for really important players like Ke'Bryan Hayes, is you want to go through and give them a secondary position. First things first, at least give them a secondary position of first base. But if you want to go into detail with it, go ahead and look up some of the secondary positions of these players because, a lot of them will play multiple positions. And then the other thing is there are some basic basic secondary positions for pretty much any position. So if you look at catchers, most of these guys are going to have no secondary position listed, which is problematic because that limits their ability to be used, especially if you're going to simulate at all in a franchise. However, most catchers can play either first base or third base. It depends a little bit depending on what their skill set is, but all of these guys that play catcher can play another position. And so it really limits your ability to get them playing time, to get them involved in the lineup if they can only play at one specific position, and that can be problematic for you. And the same goes for every other position. Normally, guys that are sitting at first base probably will only play first base, but from time to time, if they have good fielding or they have a good arm, they could play another infield position. Guys that play second base can almost always play shortstop at least and first base, if not third base as well. Guys that play third base can play pretty much anywhere in the infield between shortstop, second base, and first base. I mean, it's very standard. Shortstops, because they are known to be the most defensive player, can pretty much play any other position in the infield as well. Outfielders can play any other outfield position, so if you have an outfielder that's maybe just listed as like a left fielder, at least give them center field and right field as their secondary positions, because otherwise that's going to limit their ability to play, and it's going to limit their effectiveness at another position. The reason that I say this, the first reason that I say this actually, is that if you try to play a player out of position, you're going to run into problems where they're not going to be able to field the ball well. Like, let's say I take Ke'Bryan Hayes, for example, who's known as a really good defensive prospect. Let's say I take him and play him at first base, which he would naturally be able to play. In the game, he's going to drop balls constantly. Things are going to go past him. He's not going to play well as a first baseman. It's going to be really hard to play him at that position. And that's just simply not realistic because in real life, he could bump over to first base, no problem, and he'd be able to play it without any issues, especially with being such a good defensive prospect. And so that's where the issue starts to come into play. The second thing that I want to talk about is, like I said before with the catchers, you really limit your ability to get these guys playing time if you're not giving them a secondary position. So let's say I have two really good catchers up in the major leagues in John Ryan Murphy and Jacob Stallings. Think about it. I can't play both of these guys all the time. At the very least, I could split reps 50-50, and that's going to limit their ability to progress, that's going to limit their ability to succeed, and that's going to cause problems. But if I give both of these guys a secondary position, let's say I say Jacob Stallings, because he's a really good defender and has a really good arm, let's say he could play third base, and let's say John Ryan Murphy could play first base. That means that even if I'm playing Jacob Stallings at catcher, if somebody else is tired at first base or third base, I could take one of the other catchers and put them over at that position and get them more playing time. The other thing to note here is that this is really going to come in handy with your prospects. So guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes, guys like O'Neal Cruz, I had mentioned in my previous tips and tricks videos for MLB that you want to get your guys as much playing time as possible. Well, you limit your ability to get them playing time if they can only play one primary position. And in real life, Ke'Bryan Hayes, I guarantee you, can play other positions than just third base. And in order to benefit my progression of him, in order to be able to develop him faster, and in order to be able to get him more playing time, I put him as a secondary position, at least somewhere else. Generally speaking, I'll take a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes, who is known to be a really good defensive player, and I'll put his secondary position as shortstop, second base, and first base, because I know he can play those positions. And then that optimizes his ability to play at other positions and optimizes his ability to get maximum amount of playing time. And then, you, like I said, you might want to look up some of the people on your team, but like a guy like O'Neal Cruz, you might not guess it. He's a shortstop. He's actually really well known for being a potential right field prospect. And so I would take that and add that to his secondary positions, because then he'll continue to develop, he'll continue to get more playing time at those different positions when other people are tired, and he'll play well when he's put at those positions. Right now, O'Neal Cruz is actually potentially projected to be a right fielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The problem comes into play that if I went to play him at right field, because he doesn't have a primary or secondary position listed as right field, he would drop any ball that comes to him, and he wouldn't be able to throw the ball very well. That meter that you get when you try to throw somebody out would be super small. It'd be really hard to hit your target. You'd get a lot of inaccurate throws, you'd drop catches, and all those different things. And so that's why it's really important from a developmental perspective, and simply from a having your players play well at the positions that they should be able to play perspective, that you give these guys the correct secondary positions, or at least give them a secondary position. So hopefully this helped you guys out in some way. If it did, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment down below with what you guys would like to see next. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Have a good night.